That's completely fine. Thank you. Sorry about the mate.
I was thinking actually, because you're a dog person, aren't you? I
I
don't,
am, yes.
I
Yep.
don't know if you've got a dog with you today. My dog's here, and I was thinking she's usually pretty quiet. But if there's any chance of it, like somebody's at the door or something, she'll start barking. And I had this sort of nightmare of my dog barking and your dog, and it would just the dogs would talk more than we would.
No, there's no worry about it.
Well, hi there, everyone, and welcome to our channel, especially if you're new to us. Great to have you with us today. At the moment, we're in a teaching series, which is really trying to lift the hood on our lives and look into some of the mechanics, some of the habits and patterns and rhythms that shape us and shape us as Christians together. And as part of that, we've got this podcast series running alongside it. And it's just a chance to talk to people about what that looks like for them. And I'm really thrilled today to have Nathan McGuire with us. Nate, I was first introduced to you, Nate, a number of years ago through your blog, The Godly Irritant, which I just thought was a fantastic title. And some of those blogs that you were inviting people to write to their younger self, really great. Nate, you've got a passion, I know, to follow Jesus and to seek his justice. And I just thought it'd be great to talk to you today about your own habits and rhythms. So thank you so much for joining us. You're dressed as a vicar today. Do you want to tell us why you've come disguised as a vicar?
My clericals one. So I will be at No Faiths in Fossil Fuels Vigil Ecumenical Partnership in just outside Parliament. So we're gonna be kicking off 10 days of just basically praying outside Parliament, hoping for an end to fossil fuels being used, basically. So yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you for having me.
No, not at all, not at all. So as you think about that word habit and your own habits, what do you think has been like one or two of the biggest things that have really helped you to stay in touch with Jesus, stay connected with him, keep following him, growing like him? Well, what's been the biggest things for you?
That's a really good question. And I think just to provide a little bit of context in terms of my background, so going through education, kind of went to Catholic primary, secondary, and college. So kind of certainly having that sort of traditional engagement with Christianity, but then came to confessional faith. I would describe it as in a Pentecostal network. So for me, the kind of praise and celebration and prayer were certainly a kind of really formative part of my engagement with God and on the Spirit. But what was really interesting towards the latter part of my university engagement, I really connected with the monastic traditions, so Benedictine traditions and Franciscans, and I actually did a pilgrimage, did part of the St. Francis Camino last year.
Wow.
For 10 days. And if you know me, it was a massive feat because I exercise a lot. But really trying to connect with kind of the Franciscan tradition and kind of understanding St. Francis of Assisi. So I've got a dog. So one of my habits that I kind of really seek to, well, you have to be consistent when you've got a dog, you've got to walk them, is in the morning and really connecting with God in the morning in prayer and speaking and talking and reflecting. And I had this really bizarre experience a couple of days ago where if anyone that's got a pet or especially a dog, they know that the dog can sometimes, whether it's they need to pee, whether it's they want to play or want food, they kind of basically bug you, especially if you're working. They have a way of kind of, you're typing, getting their nose underneath your arm to try and get your attention. And my dog Jez, Hungarian Fizzler, he was basically doing that as I was kind of sitting down. I was actually watching TV. And I knew he wasn't hungry, knew he wasn't needing anything particularly, just wanted to be with me. And I remember thinking, I just want to watch the TV. There's
Yeah.
not now. Go away.
Yeah.
And he went away, kind of sulking, and he came back and just kept doing the same thing. And it's in that moment I kind of just heard uh, God say, actually, in the same way that He's
Mm,
seeking to get your attention on something, I'm actually wanting to get your attention on something.
mm,
And it
mm,
just dawned on me, like I kind of felt like a thousand-year conversation with God happened in a couple of seconds,
mm,
that God was just reminding me of seeing Him in creation,
mm,
which is
mm,
very Franciscan in terms of approach, in terms of seeing God in the everyday life and creation. And certainly since then, and kind of as I've been going out with Jez, just being really mindful of God speaking to me in the bird song, in the smell of the forest, the little woodlands that we have nearby where I live. And just being attentive in
mm,
that moment,
mm,
not necessarily for any sort of a particular prayer request, got my shopping list with God, but
mm.
just being present with Him
Yeah.
in that moment. And I think I've certainly, just even over the last couple of days, really tried to hone in on that,
Mm,
um, where I'm just being in that moment and saying, God, what do you have to say?
yeah. Yeah.
What should I be paying attention to on this particular dog walk?
Mm, mm.
And so, yeah, that's certainly one of the habits that I'm kind of growing in at the moment.
It is amazing, isn't it, how, as we've recorded these together, a number of people have commented on the need to get up and get out of where you
Mm,
are, where you're
mm,
sat, and out into, God's big world.
mm,
And there is something about just being surrounded by nature, by God's
mm.
creation. Um, I love the phrase that you used there about trying to be attentive,
Mm,
because one of the things that often I think to myself when I have sort of similar experiences is this is always here. This is always
mm.
available,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
for whatever reason, sometimes I'm just too driven. Just got to get
Mm,
somewhere, got to do something. I'm too
mm,
distracted by something that's happened, is
mm,
bothering me, and learning to be attentive.
mm,
You mentioned the sort of the monastic pattern,
mm,
and St. Francis of Assisi particularly.
mm.
How do you think that helps you in being attentive?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think s- I'm an introvert by nature, and certainly something that I try to do is get away on a regular basis for retreats. But I realize that when you um, have a 9 to 5, if you've got a family, etc., that isn't always possible to
Mm,
kind of get up and just go away for a week
mm,
and be with Jesus. So it's kind of recognizing how do you apply some of that monastic attentiveness, that sort of rhythm of
mm,
prayer, rhythm of worship in a day-to-day pattern. And I think in terms of drawing from those times when I've been away, I've been really reflecting and saying, okay, what does it look like in a 9 to 5? What does it look like in
yes.
every day? And I think I've always been struck by Brother Lawrence's approach to worship and to prayer. That sense that seeing God in the ordinary, everyday thing, doing everything as onto worship,
Mm,
onto God, whether it be washing the dishes or
yeah,
whether it be sitting down with your kids doing homework or whether it be on a dog walk, whatever it is.
yeah.
I think for me, really rejigging my thinking to say, actually, how is this an engagement with God in my everyday, ordinary things?
Mm,
Um, and certainly that has been enhanced by kind of the Pentecostal tradition that I've kind of come out of as
mm,
well, in my formation, that kind of worship as a lifestyle, kind of
mm.
seeing every opportunity. Um, so another, I guess, habit that I kind of have within my life is actually just singing. It's not that I can sing good. It often needs to be by myself. Um, I just love singing, whether that be gospel worship songs, and it's interesting because when I was on this pilgrimage in September on the St. Francis Camino, there was a real difficult point on it, and I had quite a few blisters. Was wearing the wrong socks for the journey and had way too much luggage. The irony of how many sermons I could get out of this whole thing. And I remember walking and had set off quite late with one of my mates, and he had gone ahead to try and get to the hotel before the receptionist left. So I was by myself. It had got pitch black, and my light had run out of juice.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I'm walking, got another 4 miles to go, and just really, really struggling.
Mm,
And I just remember saying, you know what, actually, God, I'm just going to praise you. I'm just going to sing.
mm,
And there is something about whether it's singing, whether it's intentional attentiveness and
mm,
reflecting on God's goodness and
mm,
thanking Him for His goodness.
mm,
The fact that actually there's been many times He's protected me, He's
mm.
kept me, even in the darkest moments. And I'm in a forest, pitch
Yeah.
black. Don't know
Yeah.
if there's bears or wolves around.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just thinking through again, actually, no, God, you're good. The fact that I'm alive, the
Yeah.
fact that I can complain that I have blisters,
Yeah.
you know, first world problem. And again, just singing and praising Him. There is something I think, again, when we look at the Old Testament, we look at the New Testament, and kind of again praising God. And the Hebrew word for one of the praise words is to commemorate. Is
Mm,
to remember God's goodness,
mm,
whether it's people building altars to God because of the significant things He's done. The people, when they after the Exodus, as they crossed the river, they kind of build a momentum,
mm,
a statue for to remember God's goodness.
mm,
And I think again, singing is an aspect of that. It's saying
yeah.
actually, I'm going to mark God's goodness by kind of praising Him. So that's certainly another habit that I kind of seek to employ.
Mm. That's really interesting because we had an active family worship a couple of
Mm,
weeks ago where we built something out of bricks. And
mm,
everyone was writing something that they were grateful to God
mm,
for on a brick and bringing it forward. And I don't have the heart to take it down. It's still there at the front. And so weeks and weeks later, it's still that sort of
yeah,
monument of,
yeah,
we celebrated here what God has done.
yeah.
And somehow, because I was thinking as you were talking about there, Brother Lawrence, the
Mm,
everything every day, that we need reminders, don't we? Because
mm,
I'm really good, I think, when it comes to habits, especially sprinting at something
yeah,
and trying to change everything all at once.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I can do that kind of Brother Lawrence thing for probably a
Mm,
couple of days, and then the
yeah,
default.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so it's trying to find the actual tangible
Mm,
reminders, I think.
yeah, yeah. I think you're really on the money, and I think certainly would speak to my lived experience as well. Building habits are really difficult. I think the individuals that kind of write on this within the literature on habit building and formation say it takes at least anywhere between 30 to 60 days to actually embed a habit.
Mm, mm,
So certainly for me, I'd recognize the challenge in that. I think one of the things I found really helpful with any forming of a habit is actually doing things that help uh, force you to do it initially.
mm,
So, for example, I was very mindful, so I'm single. I don't necessarily have any dependents.
mm,
And I was very mindful in my singleness that I could get quite preoccupied with myself, me,
mm,
myself, and I.
mm,
I had nothing within my immediate life beyond kind of serving local church, but in terms of my life outside of kind of serving the local church to really force me to think about someone else other than myself. So I actually thought about getting a dog.
mm,
So I actually got the dog, got Jez intentionally.
mm.
I probably got more than I bargained for, in that he needs quite a lot of walking. But it really to force me out the house, to force me to think about someone else in my everyday life.
Mm,
And that now that I've committed to that,
mm,
3 years on, actually, it's really forced me to be out in nature. I've found
yes,
some amazing spaces in London that I would have never known existed.
mm,
And that has really forced me initially to kind of get into a sort of rhythm of life.
mm,
I'm thinking about another being. I'm thinking and exposing myself to opportunities to engage with God. Now, I'm not saying that I'm perfect. I'm not saying that I'm kind of walking on clouds every morning. Sometimes I'm literally like, I just need to walk in and get to work. Um, but by habits can't form if there's no opportunities for them to form.
mm, mm,
And I think in having him, it certainly helped me say, actually, in the morning,
mm.
I have to have some sort of hour available. And how do I use that hour? It's then for me to choose whether I engage intentively or be attentive to how God wants to speak to me.
Yeah, yeah. It as you were talking about being out with the dog and
Mm,
it's not always cloud nine kind of stuff. I was reminded I was reading Pete Greig's book on
yeah,
prayer, or
yeah,
books on prayer, and
yeah.
he writes about a time when God led him as he was walking to this tree, and he said,
Mm,
"Look at that tree." So Pete Greig's there, sort of looking at this tree,
mm,
waiting for some major moment of divine
mm,
revelation or
mm.
reference to scripture and all those things that we wait for. And eventually got frustrated and said, God, what is it about this tree? And he said he felt God say, I've just always thought it was a nice tree. Why have you got to be so serious about everything? And I think
Yeah,
there's something in that as well, that it's okay to be playful with it,
yeah,
that God just wants us to enjoy his
yeah,
creation.
yeah, yeah. No, again, you're fully on the money. I think it's I don't know what it is about our nature that we love a lot of glitter and kind of like massive signs in the clouds, and
Mm,
maybe
mm,
something within that comes from an insecurity or feeling that we need to have more evidence than we potentially need
mm,
of
mm,
God's goodness.
mm,
But the older I get, the more I'm realizing that and growing more content with just the ordinary.
mm,
And I can't lie to you, I went away on pilgrimage hoping to have a sort of divine spiritual moment,
mm,
um, seeing God in the glory clouds,
mm,
etc. And actually, it was pretty ordinary. And most days, I would say that I was profoundly like, okay, God, when are you going to speak to me?
yeah.
In a way that I was trying to, I guess, um, force a
Mm,
particular experience,
mm,
and
mm,
actually engaging with God is a lot less serious than that.
mm, mm,
It's just being present. It's allowing Him to be who He is to us.
mm,
And I think there are times when I laughed. There are times that I cry.
mm.
Um, but all of it is communion with God.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, when we use the language and words like prayer, worship,
Mm.
we feel that they are kind of, these sort of, I'm going to use this term, hopefully it's understood, a kind of magical moment sort of
Mhm,
thing.
mhm, mm,
But actually, if we talk about communing with God, it
mm.
adds a different lens, doesn't it? Because actually, there are times when we have loads of fun with partners or
Yeah, yeah,
family members, and there's sometimes actually they're just present. You know,
yeah,
when you're
yeah,
watching TV, there is, it's not necessarily you're looking at a massive mountain vista on a holiday.
yeah,
Actually, just sitting down watching the news, for example. But
yeah,
actually, that's still communing with each other, and
yeah,
I think there is something about being with God in the ordinary, and being content and finding contentment in God,
mm,
which is a lot better than those kind of special moments that
mm,
we want.
mm, mm. That's really helpful, and I think there's something in your phrase about the fact there's an insecurity in needing more evidence of God's goodness than we
Mm,
actually need, or
mm,
wanting more than we need.
mm,
There's a lot in that. Yeah.
mm.
Well, Nate, it's been so great to talk to you. Thank you so much. I know we've got to let you get off to your, faith in fossil fuels vigil. So
Yeah,
every blessing to you with that. And, yeah, but thank you so much for your time. It's been great to talk.
thank you for having me. Thank you.
That's all.